This week on Just Business, Apple just launched the next iPhone. It's got some more buttons on it, and it has everybody wondering whether the company and the tech sector as a whole has lost its innovative edge. Then we go founder mode all over the podcast and give our takes on Brian Chesky and Paul Graham's rebrand of micromanaging. And if you stick with us till the end, we're going to give you the first 3 steps to take after having a new startup idea. Henry, what phone do you use?
You're going to expose me here, Drew, but I'm pretty sure I have an iPhone 11.
Oh, brother, same. Yeah.
All right. I like iPhone. I'm a fan. I'm probably going to be a user for the rest of my life. Great interface, but I don't necessarily need to have the newest one all the time. Like, I'm not doing crazy things. I watch
Yep.
YouTube, I text, I call, I check email, I Google. That's pretty much it. So I'm interested in learning the new features, but it's hard to get me to pull out money
I
for a new
am
one.
exactly the same way. So this is actually the first iPhone I've ever had. I was a big Android boy because I'm a contrarian before that. And I like to be
Of course
different,
you
Henry.
are.
It is an amazing piece of hardware. It's an amazing set of software tools, and I have never felt the need to upgrade in the past what has it been, 5 years, 6 years almost since this phone came out, and I bought this used.
Yeah, we're in the same place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
My girlfriend really wants me to upgrade though.
yes.
So hopefully
Sarah, similarly, my
someday.
wife, she has a 64 gigabyte iPhone 11, and she has that thing going on now where she has too many photos that it will delete apps off of her phone, and like she can't receive pictures and like all that stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes you just
Yeah,
gotta
but
upgrade.
and that leads to the point of what would cause you to upgrade. For her, it's like more storage capacity, right? For me, it's just that currently my phone feels like slightly slower, and again, that's slightly slower than out of 6 years, right? I never felt the
Yeah.
need to upgrade in that time. Just now, it's 6 years later. Maybe I should upgrade, and I feel like we've been in this cycle, yeah, for since like probably the launch of the iPhone 10 or whichever one got rid of the home button, right? This the big innovative gestures, right? All that stuff. And now we've got the iPhone 16. It's got a new button on it that lets you like click the camera easier. I don't know what's going on. Is this innovation? What is this, Henry?
It's probably not gonna convince me. And personal note, no feature is probably gonna get me to
Hmm.
switch. It's more so gonna be, does the phone
Right. It's a
die? Does the
battery. Yeah,
battery
exactly.
completely come out? But, like, I work from home, so my phone just sits on the charger
Hmm.
all day. So it's gonna be tough to get me to actually upgrade. What would actually make me do it is a cell provider and a good
Mm,
plan and getting discounts that way. But that's just a personal note. I more so think it's interesting to talk about, do they have to
mm.
innovate? Like, I think about, I love Apple Jacks. We don't need
Which is
any
not an Apple
innovation. You don't have to
product.
change the
Apple
recipe.
Jacks is not their new
No.
product.
Sorry, that was a bad one. Alright, let's go to Fruit Loops, okay? Similar vibe, better name, alright? So, Fruit Loops are great, I love it. It Would I want them to every year change the recipe, come out with something new and improved? No,
Mm,
I don't actually care. But, it's clearly different when it comes to Apple and technology because innovation is a part of their brand
yeah.
identity.
It's part
And
of what keeps
so,
that stock
I
price
don't
ticking up, right?
yeah, I feel like it isn't necessary. You can come out with a great product like an iPhone or Fruit Loops, but do you really have to change it all the time in order for it to still be good? I would say no, but it comes down to
And it
branding.
comes down to the fact that, so let's take this difference between, which I'm sure no one has ever done this comparison before, the iPhone and Fruit Loops, two innovative technologies. Uh,
Just 2 good
yes, two
things,
good
Drew.
things.
2 good
See,
things.
so Fruit Loops is a consumable. The average tenure of a box of Fruit Loops is probably about a week, right? The average tenure of an iPhone being up to 7 years, not super good for your business, right? This is the whole
Absolutely.
mattress fiasco where like to produce a mattress, it actually takes like $80, but they sell it to you for $1,200 because in order for the business to be sustainable over the long term with the like amount of market penetration you need and the amount of time between people buying stuff, right? Like you need to charge a premium price to make that sustainable. And we have gotten into this mode where we gawk at phones that cost more than $1,000. And because of that, right, we think of these as like high premium like products that we pay a lot of money for. And so we want them to last a really long time, right? Which is bad for Apple. And so Apple has to play this game of we need to convince you in some ways, the small segment of you that are willing to upgrade just to get something slightly more fancy, either by a status symbol or because of some feature, that upgrading is worth it right now. And it's so interesting. The past 3 years, I have thought to myself around this time when the new iPhone gets announced, oh, this is the year I'm going to upgrade. I thought it was the USB-C iPhone 15. That's come and gone. I thought it might be this iPhone 16. Now I'm like, I might as well buy an iPhone 14 if my phone seemingly like starts to shut down, which it's not. I bought an iFixit kit for $50 to replace the battery whenever that happens. So maybe I'll upgrade Sarah's phone. Maybe I'll upgrade to a phone and give Sarah my phone. This is a problem for the company, but the question is also like, you're asking this question of, do they need to innovate? I think they need to feel like they're innovating in order to tell shareholders that they're an innovative company and it's worth spending all of the money on all the engineers that they do. Also for the brand, right? Like if
Yeah.
Apple became a company that shipped a product it is just a micro improvement every year, but like they truly just do that every year, it would probably harm their brand over time. But what do you think about this?
It's safe to say we're not the typical consumers. We're both pretty frugal when it comes to this, but I think you have so many different perspectives that wrestle around this topic of the new iPhone
Yeah.
every year. And I understand the business model, right? You have to sell a new product every year. And I understand why the company's value is tied to their constant innovation. But then you have the perspective of most consumers don't care about the camera. They don't care about all these fancy new buttons and
Exactly.
features. They just want a phone that works, and Apple creates a great phone that works. And so the innovation, I don't think actually drives the vast majority of the revenue for a business
Hmm.
like Apple. I think just quality and the experience, and of course the brand lead up to that. And innovation is potentially a byproduct, or it has a mutual relationship with that branding. What I think is more of a facade is the tech enthusiast, sometimes myself
Hmm.
included, but I guess I sold that authority with the iPhone 11. Eh, It is what it is. But it seems so funny whenever a new iPhone comes out, the tech enthusiasts are often disappointed by the lack of
Mm.
innovation. What do you expect? Do you expect it to fold in half? Do you expect it to be holographic?
And
Like,
why?
how much yeah, what is the expectation? I'm very, like, curious. It seems every year there's disappointment from this very extreme group that would buy the new
Hmm.
iPhone. Seems like they're never satisfied, but I'm curious, would we be happy if it innovated so far away
What we know.
from what
Yeah,
we know?
exactly. I
Yeah.
think about this all the time as a tech head. I love gear. Like, I love watching reviews, all that stuff. I love the conversation around technology. And so I think I am in this group, right? That is often disappointed. And this year I did. I don't know because of we were going to do this episode or not, but I did reflect to myself, like, what am I looking for? And I don't know if I can answer that question, but what I was looking for was definitely not, hey, like you can point your phone at something and it will tell you what it is. And that's, we've got AI now. There's all of
Yeah.
this, what seems to be features that are being put into products to convince the shareholders of these large companies that they are pushing the boundaries of technology. And that's maybe not what I want. Maybe I want a camera that takes pictures that look like how I wanted them to look, like these kind of just like
Yeah.
basic quality of life things. And I will say, I do think the camera button is cool. And as someone who takes a lot of photos and videos on my phone, I do think it'd be nice. But yeah, the conversation about whether that's innovation and whether we need to be constantly innovating and pushing the boundaries is one that I think is maybe not as useful as we think it is as people surrounded and inside of the tech bubble. I'm reading
Yeah.
this book right now, just to extend the conversation of innovation, called How We Got to Now. Have you heard about this book before? Okay.
Yes.
From me, or did you read it?
From you. You've told me
Yeah,
about it
yeah.
before, but
Yeah, so
continue.
it's a book about 6 innovations that this author, Stephen Johnson, believes were pivotal in the past, whatever, 700, 800 years. And what's really interesting when I talk to people about this book is when I start to list off the things that he defines as the biggest innovations, people get confused. So I want to list them for you now. Glass, refrigeration, chemical water treatment, accurate clocks. These are
Yeah.
things that you like. Glass in particular is one where everybody always like goes, "What?" But these are what he calls hummingbird effect innovations, which are things where a development, either in measurement or in quality or in process, like creates like so many other new inventions. Like the glass not only helped us create like the microscope and the telescope and all these things that helped us map our world better, but it also helped us in like art, create like the massive cathedrals with stained glass, like all that architecture. It's like a whole across our lives sort of innovation. And I don't think that's what we're looking for or talk about when we talk about the new iPhone.
Yeah. Yo, I absolutely agree. I feel and you might push back on
Hmm.
this, the iPhone was one of those
Yeah,
innovations. The
smartphone,
smartphone
totally.
was an
Yeah.
innovation, and it almost seems by accident or by necessity that is now Apple's
Hmm.
brand. They have to associate that
Yep.
terminology and that mission with what they do, even though it's not like they're gonna be coming out with a brand new
Right.
innovation on the same level of the smartphone or
Hmm.
glass or chemically treated water, but they almost have to because they did it once.
Exactly. They have to
And
remind
if
you,
you're in
like, hey, we're the
Mhm.
company that did that once.
And you somebody might ask, myself included, why do they
Hmm.
have to? And it's because they have this pressure from potentially shareholders or
Hmm.
consumers or themselves of this is who we
Hmm.
are. If we divorce ourselves from this, we might not be special, might not be
Yep.
valuable. Competitors might be able to come in and do better than us on
Right.
things. And I know a lot of people are opinionated about the Google Pixel phone and how it's so much better than the iPhone, but we still have a lot of market penetration from
Hmm.
iPhone. So
That walled
I
garden
feel
does
like
its work.
it might really does help, but I wonder if the desire to be innovative every year, even though it's really just gimmicks and small
Hmm.
updates, you said like micro
Hmm.
changes or micro advances. It might not be because they're trying to trick us into buying things. It might just because they feel like they
Right.
have to. If they already did it once, that's their identity. They don't just want to be a regular company. Like, how would they be successful if they said, "Oh, we're not innovating anymore. We took the world forward with the iPhone. You're not gonna get that all
Right.
the time."
Right.
He
I
can't say
totally agree
that.
with you. What do you think about how this pertains to like us and people watching as founders and our relationship with how we think about innovation within our own products?
Yeah, I think it's a buzzword. I just feel like
Like, I'm not making
I
glass.
associate yeah, we're not making glass here. And you can be an
Hmm.
inventor. You can create something new without
Yep.
innovating is just such a loaded term that I feel like has been hijacked by maybe the tech
Hmm.
industry or startup culture to really mean something pretty mundane. Like, we're going to organize your email inbox. Innovation. I don't know. So I feel like by taking that out of your
Hmm.
vocabulary almost in terms of like your startups or your small business's mission, you're gonna take a lot of pressure
Totally.
off yourself to compete against these titans that are not only dominant in their industries, but have fundamentally advanced the human race. Let's not
Let's try that eye.
put ourselves up against that. Yeah, and I'm not trying to say don't shoot for the stars
No.
and do the best that you can, but it is so clear that everyone wants to be innovative, and I don't think everyone needs to be or should be in order to make the world a better place, serve their customers
Mhm.
better, improve their
Yeah, even
communities.
good
I
business.
feel like
Even build like a
yeah,
rocket ship of a business. If that's your goal, which is not something we talk about a lot here. So thanks for joining us. Leave a comment down below. But
nope,
if that is your goal, you're trying to build unicorn startup, one, more power to you. Two, listen to our other episodes. Three, yeah, like you might find that unicorn not in like revolutionizing the way that we do communications. Like you might
mhm,
find that in building really great surveillance software like Palantir. Like I'm sure people at Palantir are
it
doing some cool stuff. I don't know, technology wise, maybe some bad stuff ethically, but
it's just more likely that
exactly.
you will find incredible success if you widen your horizons beyond the innovative, like,
Yeah,
tunnel.
exactly.
So, I think it's actually a huge benefit to widen your horizons to say, "Okay, how can I just add value and do something really
Yep.
well?" Doesn't have to necessarily change the world from a technology standpoint. That's never been done is going to lead to even more inventions from this one pivotal technology.
Yeah.
Um,
And to bring it back to how we started this conversation with the iPhone, like the micro improvements that Apple has been making to the iPhone will eventually get me to buy another iPhone, right? Like,
so
yeah,
keep
keep
improving it.
improving, make those micro adjustments. The whole 1% a day thing. If you get 1% better every day for 365 days, like you're like a bajillion times better. I'm not sure what the math is there, but it's a lot.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So focus on that. But, Henry, is the reason we're not so focused on innovation as much in the tech sector and micro improvements. Is that because we're just not in founder mode? Just rock solid
Alright.
founder mode?
I guess this is what the bros are talking about. To be honest with you, I'm not really well
Oh,
versed in this idea of founder
fantastic.
mode. Catch me
Okay,
up.
boy, I have to center myself. Found,
Take your
founder
time.
mode activating. Okay, so basically, about 2 years ago, Brian Chesky, who is the CEO of Airbnb, saw that his company was like dying. They're coming out of COVID not as strong as they were before COVID. Their stock price is really down. They're doing like a gazillion things. There's like a bajillion people that work at this company. And Brian Chesky says to himself, the reason that my company has gone to the shitter is because I wasn't involved enough, which is a wild
Mm,
stance to take, first of all.
wow. Okay.
But so he decides to basically reorganize the company, lays some people off, readjusts the organizational structure so that instead of having like product managers and like different divisions of the company, goes to a more kind of leaner startup function or service model where there's more cross collaboration. And basically, his goal is he makes this big spreadsheet and he tells all of his managers to write everything that's going on at the company, and they basically say we can't, there's too much stuff. And so he says no longer, we are only going to focus on enough things that I can store in my own brain. That's basically almost a direct quote. um Later on, a year or so later, he goes on a podcast to talk about how this is going and how like he feels so much better, the company's so much leaner, blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, the stock price is still down. It is still down today. It's like down from even when they IPO'd, but he's feeling better about it. He also in this podcast describes how he doesn't have a family and works weekends all the time, and it gets sad. But basically, this is the concept of that he's dubbed founder mode. He then recently, about 2 weeks ago, went to do a talk at Y Combinator, the famous, almost infamous tech accelerator in San Francisco, where Airbnb started out, and describes this to people. Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, PG, writes a bunch of essays, writes an essay on it, and takes it a step further and says that, yeah, founders are constantly told, like, as they're scaling their businesses to delegate. And maybe that's not right. Maybe it's like all the middle managers' fault that like the companies start to plummet and blah, 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 blah. So, long story short, the conclusion of Paul Graham's essay is lead more like Steve Jobs and less like John Scully. And there's a lot of outside of this bubble of like startup bro culture. Everyone is laughing at this as they're trying to rebrand micromanagement.
Mhm.
So, hearing
No,
this for the
it
first
definitely
time,
seems
be our surrogate for the audience, maybe. What do you think about this?
yes. It feels like you're mocking this a little bit, right? Um, and I can see exactly why. I think you're in the startup mentality. You have to hustle. You're working long hours. You're trying to disrupt a huge
Mm,
industry. I can empathize with where that early founder
right.
is at, and they are involved
Everything.
in everything. But there obviously is a logical step between that mentality and the day-to-day demands of a business like that and a publicly traded
Mhm.
company. I think about, does the CEO at Disney need to have everything in their head about the theme parks and the movies and all the animation studios and the cruise ships
Mhm.
internationally? That's not gonna be a good idea. It's not possible, and it just isn't
And it's
necessary.
probably there's no way that person can be an expert in everything.
Yeah, and that was
Mm.
my other thought was, man, as soon as it is financially viable for me to expand my knowledge base and my skill set by making really great hires, I'm
Right.
doing it. Like it is very I think sometimes we think about startups having toxic work
Mhm.
environments, but it's super toxic to just say everything has to go through me and my
Mhm.
brain.
That out of all that is good, right? This is yeah,
Sounds like
exactly.
it.
This is
Yeah.
everyone wants to believe
Yeah.
that they're Steve Jobs, and then you have to remember that Steve Jobs was Steve Jobs because he, like, ignored all the other stuff in his life, which
Yeah.
is not good. And I will say I am mocking this because it does fly in the face of a lot of what I believe, which is that as founders, we are predisposed to have a lot of hubris, a lot of myopia in what we are capable of, and that what PG and Brian Chesky seem to be saying is that hiring a manager, like hiring somebody to who can take over something and know slightly more than you about how stuff works is ends up being bad because all those people are just professional fakers, as PG calls them. Um, and I think that's just like a really cynical way of thinking about a company, and
Wow.
also doesn't completely uh, take the responsibility that you had in hiring those people. Right?
Mhm.
If bad people come into your company and you're the CEO, it's because you hired them. like
Doing their job
It's
for
not
them is
yeah, it's
not a
not the
solution to
solution.
the
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. There is something that I find pretty resonant in this concept though, and it does actually align with a lot of what I'm talking about in some of the chapters of the book that I'm writing about kind of the common advice that a lot of founders get when they scale their businesses is like creating layers of abstraction between them and their customers, right? If they're going to continue to be this CEO character and build out the layers of the pyramid that we usually use to run our businesses, they're just going to get farther from the customer. They're going to get farther in terms of the empathy they have for them, the understanding of their problems. And uh, those layers of abstraction are usually the things that allow people to come in and disrupt the incumbent, which now you are usually. And so, in that way, I agree with what Brian Chesky is saying is that he became out of touch, right? He's become out of touch with what's going on at the company, how the product aligns with what customers want. And so he's trying to realign those things and realign those things throughout the company. What do you think about that, Henry?
Yeah, it makes me start thinking of some extreme ideas, but
That's my thing, Henry.
I
That's my thing.
I'm just anticipating you, and I feel like you discuss the idea of a CEO is naturally going to distance themselves from the
Mm.
customer. Why
Yeah.
is that? Because their priorities become more the
Yeah.
team, right? They're not having as much direct impact, but they have to hire and support a team in order to
Yeah.
continue the mission. And then eventually that might gravitate towards the shareholders, right? So you go customers, employees, or team, and then to the
Hmm.
shareholders. would you rather the CEO stay close to the customers and neglect one of those other two parties? It seems like a really tough balance. And so it begs the question, if the CEO is going to naturally progress up that chain of
Hmm.
stakeholders, how do you keep the company grounded and rooted in the day-to-day experience of the business, which is the
Yeah, I,
customers?
I think that's a fantastic question. And before I answer it, I want to talk a little bit about what Chesky talks about in this podcast as what sets founders apart from the managers, right? One of
Okay,
the
good.
things that Chesky talks about is that a founder is the biological parent of the company. They've been through the ringer, they've been there since the beginning. It came from them, is the quote that he uses in this podcast, which I completely empathize with and agree with. And so they
Yep.
love the company differently. And that love is going to showcase itself in taking care of things maybe differently than someone who was not there at the beginning. The other point he talks about is that the founder has permission to make changes. Whereas if you're hiring a lot of middle managers or division managers, they often don't have the permission to actually make change and to advocate for either customers or employees or whoever the stakeholder is. They have to go through the CEO anyway or get a new charter from the CEO. And so they don't have actually the permission to make change. And finally, the third thing he talks about is that founder knows how they built the company, so they know how to rebuild the company, which is a very interesting thing. They have some
Mm,
they
you're
have some
losing me.
institutional memory, which I agree with,
Mhm.
that allows them to know what they've tried before, like what has been tried in the past so that we don't repeat ourselves, and how they got to here. I think that's all amazing and is like really good difference between founder and a manager. The problem that I think is not seen in Chesky's analysis of this is a lot of that just simply comes from ownership, having the ownership to make change, having the ownership to have your 80% of your net worth tied to this thing. Like all of that
Yep.
creates this kind of love attachment that he's trying to seek that pushes people to really care about the company in a way that only the founder can. But all of that love and connection and everything seems to only come because of ownership. And so one way to solve this is to say, I'm the founder, I'm the one that owns it, I'm taking ownership of it, it's all me. The other way is to say, we're going to give people more ownership and agency and hire good people and all that stuff, which is the stuff that we constantly see works, right? It's a very interesting distinction that he makes with some cognitive dissonance about what actually might solve the problem.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like a founder has a authority which is derived from their intimacy to the
Yes,
company. And so they have that special bond. And the analogy of a parent is almost a little bit scary because not everybody is equipped to be a parent. And there's helicopter parents out there. And it isn't necessarily a stamp of, I am the greatest person to lead this
exactly. It's kind
company
of
forward.
paternalistic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I, I think these are some really good ideas. I do want to point out the fact that it seems like the market loves this like attitude though.
Totally.
Elon Musk comes to
Exactly.
mind as somebody who, at least in the mythology, is somebody that gets into the details, gets technical, is direct with the
Asked all the
engineers to
engineers to
solve
print out
those
all the
like
code. What the hell was that?
yeah, which is crazy stuff, but clearly, like, the market
Mhm.
likes it, like, valuations just eat that stuff up. People really want a
Leader,
hands-on founder, leader, CEO, and so I wonder what the best advice is moving forward. Is that sort of unhealthy work-life balance where everything needs to go through the mind of one
right?
person, is that really what the market should be betting on? Because that's what we're doing at the end of the
Mhm.
day, right? Like, we're trying to predict the future and gamble on the outcome as best as
Right?
we can. To me, it feels, let's get more voices in the room. Let's have the wisdom of the
Mhm.
crowd and not trust blindly in a single person or a single founder. It personally comes from me because I don't want to have that
Totally.
responsibility. I want to be the heart of the company. I want to have the vision. I want to bring the right people together in order to accomplish the
Totally.
mission. And that mission is really important to me. But I don't know if I wanna be the person responsible for every single thing. There's most things in the world I have 0 understanding of. So, like, my scope is just so
Right.
small compared to what is needed to really build a big,
Yeah,
successful
but you're a
company,
humble
so
individual, Henry. The thing I want people to take away of what's the alternative, right? Brian Chesky in this podcast that he does that kind of instigated this concept of founder mode talks about how they don't have a chief product officer because he sees himself as the chief product officer. He's the one that understands
wow.
intimately how they need, what direction they need to move in, how the product needs to work for both hosts and guests. And in so many ways, I have no idea what it's like to work there. But just hearing him talk, I agree. He's been there since the beginning. He has all the institutional memory. He is the one that has been like all of these things that he's talking about as evidence of why founders work better in these roles than managers. I could see that for product for him, right? It's establishing whether or not he needs to be also the CEO and whether the CEO should also be the
Yeah.
CPO is the question. And I think that's the question to ask yourself as a founder, not because it's you should be putting the cart before the horse about what if I ran a 7,000 person company, how would I do it? You're not doing that probably. If you are, again, comment down below. But what role do you feel you are have unique skills and unique interest in, and continue to follow that, and then get everywhere else, like everything else, bring good people, right? Like people you trust, people you work well with, and do that slow. I think a lot of what Brian Chesky is talking about in terms of kind of the collapse of their company is so much also because of like the blitz scaling mentality. Of course, you're going to lose connection and not have a good organizational structure and not maybe hire all of the best people for the best roles in if you're trying to hire like 2,000 people in 2 years or 3 years. That's
Yeah,
just of course. So, just food for thought.
definitely some good
Mhm.
takeaways there. I think, yeah, it's product is awesome because it's such a
Yeah,
collaborative field, right? You're able to really get into the weeds, but is that where your chief executive should be?
especially of a public
There's
company.
other things
Yeah.
beyond. Yeah, there's more beyond just product. It is super important. It's where I love to
Mhm.
gravitate towards and coming up with ideas and running companies, but yeah, the idea that every founder should limit themselves or every executive should focus strictly on that, I feel like could be a distraction from the bigger
Mhm.
picture.
Yeah. And again, product is the most central, right? Your product is everything. Your relationship with your customer is everything, and the relationship with your customer is your product. But yes, I completely agree that the person that's at the helm, right, of like the massive organization, right, maybe doesn't necessarily need to be also the person that is completely in charge of the product. Intimately tied together, right? Two peas in a pod,
Of
but
course.
maybe not the same.
Yeah, they're both in the C-suite, so they should be working very
Right.
closely together. I know that we both like to brainstorm new ideas, iterate
Yes.
concepts, launch ideas, get scrappy with it. I feel sometimes I at least I rush to write a 12-page business plan or get right into hiring a designer to bring
Yep.
this to life. You've recently come up with an idea. What's a good framework with kind of the first steps of either validating or fleshing out that spark of
Yeah, totally.
inspiration?
So, like you mentioned, we're me, Keith, my co-founder, his wife, my wife. Like we were sitting at dinner over the weekend, and Chelsea, Keith's wife, and Sarah were commiserating about how difficult it is to keep track of the things that each of them recommends to each other. Um, in this conversation, while discussing these problems, I talk about how I've been thinking about this idea for a uh, recommendation management app or like a curation app, and not in any way pitching, right? In some ways, just like gauging the reaction of, is this anything? This is like a constant refrain between me and my friend group that I like always, is this anything? Right? Like I'm going to have 1,000 ideas all the time. Is this one any good? And you gauge the reaction, right? I think our initial thought when we have ideas, and also I wrote this idea down in my notebook and just completely left it for months. That's the first step, right? Write it down, keep it in the back of your mind. Almost take no action, right? and then see how this idea potentially resurfaces in your life, right? There's no need to go all
Yeah.
in on every startup idea you have. You will have a gazillion, right? It's about being very diligent with the ones that and listening almost to the world around you about which ones come back to you. So this one has come back to me, and I immediately talked to my friends about it, gauge the reaction. That's step one. Step two, after they said, hey, this would be cool and we should work on it, seems great. Let's dig into the questions about what is it? And the best exercise I feel like I have built for that is to write your landing page. Write down in kind of the marketing ish language, but in clear, what does it do? Why is it valuable? And because it allows you to identify who your kind of target customer is, because you have to write to that person, right? You have to write down the list of core features that you think are a selling point, which would be influential when you go into design, so that you're not like, it's very easy once you get into Figma to just vomit everything you could possibly think could be in an app. Henry's pointing at himself.
Yep. Been
Right?
there,
But the
done that
landing page
many
restricts
times.
you. It restricts
Yep.
you to usually
Mhm.
3. What's the 3 core? That's the way that you outline your MVP. And finally, what writing your landing page allows you to do is launch your landing page. It's a so easy move, and it doesn't mean you have to, because sometimes you'll write your landing page and you realize, I don't think this is anything. But if you do think it's something, it's very easy then to go to a website builder or to build something out yourself with the copy. You've already got the copy. Go on to tally.so or like some form builder, make a waitlist form, and you've launched a thing. And now you can try to get people to engage with it while you try to actually now go into the design part and build out your product. But before you do that, the last thing I usually do is Google it. Like after you've written it down,
Yep.
after you understand how you might talk about this, it makes it a lot easier for you to try to find how someone else has talked about this and to find comps. Um, so those are the 3 things that I recommend once you have a new startup idea. 1, tell someone, but part 0 is put it away. 1 is tell someone. 2, write the landing page. 3, Google it. Anything to add, Henry?
It's a nice framework. I like it a lot. I typically am trying to immerse myself in that product space or the problem
Mm,
space
mm,
more
mm.
specifically. And so the research actually normally comes earlier for me. Like I'll have the idea, do some research, hopefully sit on it. If it persists, great. We could take it forward. But I really like this approach. I think having the tests of does the idea
Mhm.
persist? Yes. Can I sell the idea? Yes. Have other people already done this or made this idea better? Do we advance, yes or no? Super good framework. I feel like the one big obstacle that I've faced, and I'm curious if you have any
Yep.
suggestions, is you're putting together that landing page. We wanna do it fast. We wanna get other people's opinions. The biggest obstacle for me is what's this thing gonna
Mhm.
look like? How do I make a landing page that's pretty enough to excite people so that I can sell this idea? Is that a valid obstacle?
Okay. I do think in some ways this is a valid obstacle. Having images is something that builds trust when people are looking at a website. To think that this product could exist is important, but I don't know if it's as important as a lot of founders think, specifically because most of the time, no one is going to find your landing page unless you send it to them. And
Yeah,
because of that, yeah,
agreed.
because
Yep.
of that relationship that you're going to have early with as an early touch point with your customer, that's usually you reaching out to somebody. You probably have talked to them either over Zoom or in person or whatever. You'll have told them about the concept. You'll have built some sense of trust that like you are a human that is actually wanting to help them with something. And the ideal case is actually they go to your landing page and just immediately click the button. Like they're never going to need to read more because you've already sold them. And what that initial feedback can give you, like either building a list or gauging people's reactions or understanding how people are discussing with you the problem, is the thing that's going to help inform your design. And so in some ways it feels like a slight not waste of time because it's useful, maybe misdirection of time to focus so much on design and trying to come up with really good images for something when really what you need is that group of people first to tell you when the images are right and then put them on your landing page. Does that make any sense, Henry?
That makes a ton of sense, and I think, again, you're relieving the pressure of kind of everything that it takes to build that landing page because we all know we're not putting paid ads
Right.
behind this early landing page. You are the
Mhm.
seller as the founder, so the exercise of building out the landing page is more helping you frame, "How am I
Yeah,
gonna sell it?" The landing page isn't gonna
exactly.
sell it. It's just the lead
Yes,
capture.
but that is
Just the
important
button.
then about the landing page, and it's why I do this second kind of third, is writing out the landing page helps you craft that narrative. It helps you understand how you would talk to this or talk about this to somebody when you get in those conversations, which can be really helpful before you go into those conversations, depending on your relationship already with the customers that you're targeting.
Yeah. Good stuff. We're putting it to the
We're putting it to
test,
this. We will
and
report. I should have something ready to share by next week.
excellent, Drew. We're moving fast, but not breaking
It's not
anything yet.
freaking anything yet, hopefully. Killer, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Just Business. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe down below. Leave a comment with any suggestions for topics or things that you're struggling with. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And thanks for being here.